Hello. First of all, I'm very excited to be presenting to you guys as the new head coach of Melchester Rovers, an opportunity I'm excited about and can't wait to get started. However, within this role of head coach, of course, I'm going to need a background team to support and assist with both on-field and off-field matters. So I've pulled together a little report of a few of the positions I think I need to make this job a real success, and I'm hoping that you guys can support me throughout. So a couple of the roles that I'd be looking for, of course the first couple, assistant manager and first team coach, which you kind of expect. Then we move on to goalkeeper, coach, physio, doctor, analysis, sports scientist and scout. Throughout this PowerPoint I'll outline the reasons why I think I need them and a short job description of what I kind of want from the people in these positions. So we start with assistant manager, of course working very closely with myself. So that first and foremost their job would be support me with the management of players and staff. That we maintain the standards around the training facilities and be a link between players and manager. This is quite important for me, as I feel like as a head coach manager, players are a little bit more reluctant to come and speak to you about certain things, but I think it is really important in the modern day especially that you have that link with players. So assistant manager is crucial for me for that. And then of course when it comes to coaching, design and deliver high quality coaching training sessions, and this has got to be linked to my philosophy as outlined in my interview guys earlier on in the week. I like to pass, build from the back. I'll not go into all the details, but it's really important the assistant manager links to that. Moving on, so job description, I think it's essential that they've got at least a UEFA A licence to be working in this position, especially with Melchester Rovers on the rise. We're ambitious, so I think an A licence qualification is reasonable. Ideally, we would have the assistant manager working with the youths as well, so a UEFA youth licence or the equivalent is an essential part of this remit. Moving on to experience of first team football, experience in management, again is important as it's a senior position at the football club. And finally, I want them to be familiar with Melchester Rovers and the philosophy, not just that I'm bringing in, but the club as a whole. And desirable, so those were essentials and those are things I expect from them. But with the desirable, I think it is familiar with worked in the league, or at least familiar with the players in the league, so they can hit the ground running, and any insight and knowledge they can bring will be fundamental to our successes as we move forward. The next position that's going to work quite closely with myself would be the first team coach. So their main job would be more on-field matters compared to assistant manager, where we'll be talking more administrative roles. So they'll be plan and deliver coaching sessions in line with the philosophy that we want at the club and the philosophy I'm trying to implement at the club. They would liaise closely with the assistant manager and myself as part of the senior management team. And again, they'd be involved in constant communication with players. This could be in the form of individual plan, goals and feedback. When it comes to my match days, obviously head coach, got media duties and other responsibilities, so I need to have a reliable person that could lead warm up, but still be part of the senior group and report back anything that's of concern or praise, whatever it may be. So slightly different from the assistant manager. I think it's A licence, maybe not quite needed for this kind of position, but at minimum I'd expect a B licence. And again, experience of full-time football is essential for me so we can hit the ground running. One of the other big things for the first team coach would be the link with youth players. I'm a big believer of bringing through youths into first team. I don't think there's enough in the modern game, and feel the first team coach would be really important to link up with the academy coaches and managers, so there's a clear pathway throughout the club. Desirable experience of the Scottish Premier League, similar to assistant manager, and knowledge of Melchester Rovers players. Again, important, they're going to be working day in, day out with these players in the coaching field. So I think it is important they've got some background and understand the level they're going to be working at. And of course, like I said earlier, B licence is essential. But with a club on the rise, we'd expect the first team coach to be ambitious and be looking to achieve their UEFA A licence, and in turn that provides a strong work ethic and motivated for success. Moving away, but again still part of the senior team at Classum, is the goalkeeper coach. They're of course in charge of mainly the goalkeepers, but they'd also take charge of the set pieces and help support set pieces. They would not just in charge of first team goalkeeping sessions, but academy goalkeeping sessions as well, and working closely with the academy coaches. And where needed, I'd expect them to be able to step up and help with first team matters. So experience of the all-round game would be essential for me. As this outlined in the job description, I'd have essential would be of course the goalkeeper qualified UEFA B licence at minimum, but I'd expect them to have the UEFA B licence standard course as well in outfield football, as they'll be obviously supporting throughout. Familiar with the philosophy of Melchester Rovers is paramount to all positions in the team that's working within the coaches. I think that goes without saying, that we've all got to be on the same page, so I'd expect nothing different from the goalkeeper coach. And similar to my previous positions, experience of Scottish football and knowledge of Melchester Rovers would be more or less essential for me, so we can hit the ground running and so they can hit the ground running with the players. And similar to the first team coach, our club on the rise, we want to not just bring players on, but we want to improve our coaches as well. So our coaches got to be passionate to achieve the UEFA A licence, and of course the club and myself would support them in this. Physio, I think in the modern day the physio is very important, especially with workloads that players are expected these days. So first and foremost, I'd expect the physio to be delivering high quality treatment and rehabilitation for players. Ultimately, if the players aren't fit, they can't perform. So I'd expect the physio to support this with a continuous assessment of players, and they'd also be in charge or responsible for medical concerns that players have, and they'll be working quite closely with a club doctor, which I'll come on to speak about later on. Not something I'm too familiar with, of course, the physio, but I have outlined some of the essentials I still expect. I'd expect a Bachelor of Science in Physiotherapy, Health Professional Council registered, and member of the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. Their qualification I'd expect them to have so they can provide top quality treatment to players, but there's obviously desirable courses that I'd expect as well. And one of the big things for me, as much as it is important they're top physios, I think it's important they've worked in the football environment before, and preferably a first team environment. So as mentioned there, they will be working closely with a doctor. Again, not many clubs at the level we're playing at the moment have doctors, but this is something I'd be looking to bring in just to give us that extra edge and hopefully provide us with that something different that other teams haven't got. So they'd be support the physio with player health and injuries, but they'd also be in charge of all medicines and regulations. So in the modern day with the doping controls, we'd have somebody in charge of this to ensure Melchester Rovers are above board and don't grab attention for the wrong reasons. And moving on, one there that's maybe more so in the current remit, it would be the COVID-19 officer. So he'd be in charge of ensuring COVID measurements are in place. And finally, one advantage I think of having a club doctor would be, of course, the ability to perform emergency treatment at training and matches. So again, similar to physio, a few qualifications I'd expect them to have as a minimum would be hold a license to practice medicine by the GMC, hold a diploma in sports medicine, hold an advanced trauma medical management in football, UCAD clean sports provider, and attend a yearly ATMMIF reaccreditation. Again, these are all very much qualifications expected doctor to have, but above all this, experience of football setting, experience of dealing with youth and senior players, and willingness to undertake any extra jobs that's needed around the club, whether that be supporting the physio, gathering data. So within this role, IT skills are quite important, I feel. Again, moving on to sports scientists, something that's probably came into the game more recently and something that I know Melchester Rovers don't have at the moment and feel they should have to get them to the next level. So sports scientists would be in charge of would be in charge of the GPS units and heart rate belts. So obviously this measures the sprints, the distance of players, and I'd also expect the sports scientist to assist with gym sessions and player recovery. Ultimately, we want to get the players on the pitch as much as possible, so supporting with the rehab would also be part of the sports scientist remit. Similar to physio, I'd expect them to hold a Bachelor of Science degree, and this time in sports science. Experience of using GPS systems, obviously not the cheapest software system to buy, so if we're using it, I'd want it used properly. And of course, like all roles outlined here within my background team, I must have experience of football and preferably working in first team and youth experience. Unlike some of the roles, the sports scientists will be gathering data, so I think the use of excellent IT skills, different databases and different Microsoft packages is also quite important. So in the next bit, analysis and scout. So ideally I'd have an analysis and a scout, but realistically I think for the early stages until we start to see the progress, I'd be looking for the analysis and scout to be one person. So they'd be leading all profiling of opposition teams. By this I mean the video analysis of other teams. They look at them, watch them and report back systems, pros, cons, flaws in their systems, and areas we can exploit. And they would also help within our team video analysis to ensure players are getting that one-to-one and individual packages that I think helps provide success. Moving on, the other side of the game, of course, the transfer windows, and I'd expect the scout to be monitoring potential new signings for us, and if needed to provide data on these players, so we know what we're working with, and so I can decide if that, along with my assistant manager and first team coach, if this is what we're needing, and if not, provide information to take it to the next level. So of course, like any job, they must be available to work every Melchester Rovers home game and away game. I'd expect them to provide live updates during the game. Experience of Huddle, so currently in place we have the Huddle platform, and I'd expect the analysis to have experience, not necessarily full experience, but I expect them to have worked with the system before, and of course we can provide training if needed. And within that, data handling is absolutely essential. Within the role, there's obviously going to be challenges working home, away, and oppositions. So adaptable management style and willingness to build relationships with players and staff is so important. I feel it's quite important that players are comfortable to come and speak to analysis, whether that be to get individual plans, individual clips, and ideally I'd have that analysis provide these for them. And of course, this isn't just for first team, this is youth throughout. Obviously, a crucial part of my philosophy is bringing through the youth, so all the roles will be working closely with the youths. So overall, those are kind of the 6, 7, 8 roles I'd expect or hope for your support. And of course, any questions, I look forward to answering them, and that was more just a